Okay, welcome back, Bio. We are continuing on with chemical pathways of cellular respiration. So we're going to take a look at two types of pathways today, glycolysis and fermentation. So first one, what happens during the process of glycolysis? So glycolysis is a process in which one molecule of glucose is broken in half and it produces two molecules of what's called pyruvic acid. So just in order to kind of help us remember this, we're not going to need to know what pyruvic acid looks like when it's all like on a molecular level. Just know when we break a molecule of glucose in half, this is what we get. We get two molecules of pyruvic acid. So pyruvic acid plus pyruvic acid equals glucose. So that is what happens in the process of glycolysis. It is going to break down glucose in half and give us pyruvic acid. And some advantages of glycolysis. The process of glycolysis is so fast that cells can produce thousands of ATP molecules in a few milliseconds. So this is a process that will not take any time at all, and it'll give us a relatively high amount of ATP. And it does not require oxygen, therefore it is known as an anaerobic process. So this is a very important word, anaerobic, and that means without oxygen. So remember, when you see an A or an AN in front of something, that means without, and aerobic means with just means oxygen is required. So anaerobic means no oxygen is required. So remember that term. So that's what happens for glycolysis. Molecules are broken in half. The molecules of glucose are broken in half, forming pyruvic acid. It happens very quickly, and no oxygen is required, therefore it is an anaerobic process. So then the next one is called fermentation. So when oxygen is not present, glycolysis is followed by a different pathway. So the combined process of this pathway and glycolysis is called fermentation. So this is glycolysis, no oxygen present, and then another pathway, and it's fermentation. So fermentation releases energy from food molecules by producing ATP in the absence of oxygen. So fermentation, again, these are all going to be ways to produce ATP, and this is again just another one in the absence of oxygen. It's an anaerobic process, so it does not require oxygen. I'll beat myself to it. There, it's an anaerobic process. And so we're going to look at two types of fermentation. The first one is lactic acid fermentation, and the second one being alcoholic fermentation. So the first one, yeast and a few other microorganisms use alcoholic fermentation, forming ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide as waste. So if you guys did not know, yeast is huge in the production of alcohol in the wine industry and in the beer industry as well. And yeast is like a fungi, so it's related to the mushrooms. And so they use this process to help break down different materials, and they form ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide as waste. So that is our first type, alcoholic fermentation. Then our next type is lactic acid fermentation, and this converts glucose into lactic acid. And lactic acid is important. I think a lot of you play some type of sports or somewhere have at least ran. So the reason why your muscles fatigue or get tired is from a buildup of lactic acid inside your muscles. So we try to get rid of this lactic acid as fast as we can. However, it is not a very easy process. It's very painful when we have that buildup of lactic acid inside our muscles. So when we use a lot of energy, the lactic acid will build up, and then we will have this occur. So we need to have the fermentation to try to keep our muscles from fatiguing too bad. However, again, it's kind of a long process. So short and sweet video today. Let me know if you have any questions.